Since the earliest records of humanity, the ancients believed that the universe was alive and conscious. That every thought, every emotion, and every intention cast into the air would sooner or later return as a reflection. It wasn't superstition, it was spiritual science. A principle preserved in the clay tablets of Mesopotamia, the papyri of Egypt, and the hidden texts of Tibetan temples. They called it the mirror of reality. They said that the world outside is nothing but the projected image of what we cultivate inside. If there is chaos on the outside, there is disorder on the inside. If there is scarcity, there are beliefs that sustain it, and if life seems to punish us, maybe it's just trying to teach us. For years, I doubted this. I thought reality was something fixed, cold, independent of what I felt. But everything changed the day I noticed a pattern that was impossible to ignore. Every time I tried to change the world, nothing happened. But when I changed something inside me, the world reacted as if it were alive. People changed, opportunities presented themselves. The energy around me seemed to recognize me. It was then that I understood the secret that the ancients hid between the lines of their teachings. Nothing changes out there until something changes in here. The mirror principle is not a mystical belief, it is a law. A law that acts silently, shaping our reality according to what we vibrate, think, and feel. And when you understand this, the game of life changes forever. Today, I will guide you through this forgotten knowledge. Let's decipher the mirror principle together and understand why reality never bows before those who refuse to look within. It all started subtly, small coincidences that, at first glance, seemed random, but which began to repeat themselves with frightening frequency. It was like the universe was trying to tell me something, and I just didn't want to listen. I would wake up irritated, and the whole day seemed to conspire to provoke me. People treated me impatiently, traffic honked at me, and even the weather seemed to change its mood with me. But on the rare days when I woke up peacefully, something different happened. The world also seemed to breathe easier. It was as if every person around me reflected exactly what I felt inside. It took me a while to realize, but when I finally accepted the possibility that reality wasn't fixed but rather a mirror of my inner state, everything began to make sense. Ancient civilizations knew this. The Egyptian priest said that the world is the polished reflection of the human heart. For them, the heart was not just an organ, but the magnetic center of creation. What you carry within you, love or fear, shapes the landscape around you, and I started testing this. Not in theories, but in practice. One morning, instead of reacting to life with irritation, I decided to observe my thoughts. I realized how accustomed I was to blaming others, to pointing the finger, but the mirror doesn't lie. Everything I saw outside was just an amplified reflection of what I was nurturing inside. It was then that I understood something profound. Reality does not respond to my wishes, it responds to my vibration. I could say I wanted to prosper, but if inside I vibrated scarcity, the universe only reflected the echo of that frequency. That was the first step in my change, accepting that the mirror is not wrong. I was the one who needed to adjust the image it reflected. And the more I observed, the more I saw. Every person, every situation, every challenge was just a fragment of my own reflection trying to show me where I still needed to evolve. The mirror principle, I discovered, was not a myth. It was the silent language of reality trying, all the time, to teach us who we really are. Over time, I began to notice that the mirror reflected not only what I thought, but what I felt, and that changed everything. Because thoughts are easy to disguise. You can smile on the outside, say you're fine, repeat positive phrases. But the mirror of life, it does not hear the words, he feels the vibration behind them. I realized that I was carrying an old weight inside me. Resentments I swore I had forgotten, fears I learned to camouflage. And it was there that the principle began to reveal its harshest side to me. While I was trying to attract prosperity, life showed me scarcity. While I was seeking love, I was attracting rejection. It was as if the universe said, as long as there is shadow within you, the light will have nowhere to reflect. I remembered a manuscript I read years ago, a text attributed to the priests of Heliopolis in ancient Egypt. They taught that the human heart is the mirror of the gods. When man carries anger, guilt, or fear, he obscures the surface of the mirror and cannot see the divine reflected there. Purification, they said, was not an external ritual, it was the act of cleansing the inner reflection. It was at this point that I understood. The outside world is just a theater where inner emotions play out. Nothing happens against us, everything happens to it, we can see what still needs to be healed. I then began to observe each situation with a different perspective. A conflict at work stopped being an injustice and became a reflection of my own insecurity. An argument with someone close to you stopped being the other person's fault and became a reflection of the fear of not being heard. Everything was there, just giving me back what I myself emanated. And for the first time, I stopped fighting the mirror. Instead of trying to change the reflection, I started changing myself. It was uncomfortable at first, but with each step, I realized the world responded. People reacted differently, old situations dissolved effortlessly. It was as if the universe was saying, "Now yes, you're starting to understand how the mirror works." Once I learned to observe my emotions, I realized there was a second level to the game. The mirror of reality doesn't just reflect what we feel, it's also shaped by the thoughts we choose to repeat. The human mind, I discovered, is like an invisible brush that draws the world around us. Each thought is a brushstroke of energy, a subtle form that accumulates until it creates the scenario in which we live, and the ancients knew this. In the philosophical schools of ancient Greece, there was a teaching that few understood: man becomes what he contemplates. It wasn't metaphor, it was spiritual physics. What we hold in our minds becomes so real within us that the mirror of the universe has no choice but to reflect the same thing out there. I began to notice the images I fed myself every day: worrying, scarcity, fear of the future. And the curious thing is that the more I fought against these thoughts, the more they grew. It was then that I realized the trick: the mirror doesn't distinguish between what you desire and what you fear. It just reflects what you supports with energy. A Hindu master, whose name has been lost to time, said that thought is the first breath of creation. It all begins there, in the mind, in the idea, in the still invisible form. And when this thought is watered by emotion, it takes shape, comes to life, gains reflection. I began to watch over my mind like a temple, not to control, but to understand. Each negative thought was like a stone thrown into a pond, it distorted the reflection. But when I allowed my mind to be silent, the mirror became crystal clear. And, in that silence, the world began to reorganize itself. Little by little, I noticed that the coincidences were no longer coincidences. The right people showed up, doors opened, and even the weather seemed to align with how I felt inside. As if the mirror said, "Now you are consciously drawing your reflection." It was at this point that I understood: the universe is not outside of us. It is just the extension of what we think consistently. It was when I thought I understood everything that the mirror revealed its deepest layer. Because it doesn't just reflect what's on the surface. It also shows what is hidden in the depths of the mind. I started to realize that some reflexes didn't make sense. Even when I maintained positive thoughts, certain situations insisted on repeating themselves: failures, rejections, losses. It was like something inside me kept sending me signals that I couldn't control. That's when I understood: the mirror doesn't just respond to what Yao thinks. He responds to what you believe, and beliefs are not always conscious. The ancients called these the shadows of the soul. In Egypt, it was believed that the life energy of man carried the memories of past lives, and that these memories shaped the present destiny. In the Hermetic tradition, it was said that man lives imprisoned within his own inherited thoughts. Today, we call this the unconscious, but the ancients already knew: what you do not observe within yourself governs your reality. I then began to revisit the past. I remembered phrases I heard as a child, beliefs I absorbed without question. Money is hard, true love doesn't exist. You must suffer to be worthy. Small sentences, but with gigantic power. Because the mirror does not reflect what is true, it reflects what you believe to be. And if within me there were beliefs of scarcity, fear and guilt, the reflection could only be the same. Reality became a screen projecting the film that I myself, without realizing it, had written. Tibetan priests said that whoever masters the inner mirror master's destiny. And perhaps that was exactly it. The universe is not punitive, it is pedagogical. He tirelessly shows us the beliefs that need healing. Little by little, I began to rewrite my own reflection. Not trying to erase the past, but illuminating it. Because when you look at your shadows with awareness, the mirror stops being an enemy, he becomes a guide. When I understood that the mirror of reality responded to my beliefs, a question haunted me for days. If everything is a reflection, is there a way to consciously choose what it shows? And the answer came in a silent, almost mystical way. On one of those days when time seemed suspended, I felt something inside me shift a rare clarity, as if the air itself whispered ancient secrets. The word that echoed was intention. The ancients called it the breath of the gods. They believed that intention is the creative force that unites the invisible with the visible. When mind and heart are out of alignment, the mirror fragments the image. But when the two come together, when you think with your heart and feel with your mind, reality bends before you. I remembered an ancient inscription I once saw carved on a stone in Luxor. The man who desires without feeling does not create. The man who feels without desiring only dreams. But he who unites desire and feeling moves heaven and earth. It was there that I realized the secret. True intention is not born of wanting, but of to be. It's not about asking, it's about vibrating. To become what you want to see reflected, I started practicing this. Before I acted, I aligned my thought with my emotion and felt as if what I desired was already real. And, as if in a magic mirror, things began to respond. Small coincidences, unlikely encounters, perfect synchronicities. Nothing forced, everything flowing. The mirror, I realized, is not a wall between you and the world. It is a living field, sensitive to internal coherence. If there is doubt, the reflection is fragmented. But when there is clarity and presence, reality settles like a calm lake reflecting the sky. At that moment, I understood why the ancients called the human being the image and likeness of the divine. It wasn't about looks, it was about creative power. The mirror only gives us back what we are, not what we ask for. And if you learn Toto Bedi reflection of what you desire, the whole world becomes your perfect mirror. Once I understood the power of intention, I found that the mirror of reality would always be kind to me. That all I had to do was vibrate positively, think clearly, and the universe would reward me with harmony. But the mirror, it's not a toy, he is a master. In the following days, everything seemed to fall apart. Plans went wrong, people walked away, and situations I thought I had already overcome came back with a vengeance. For a moment, I thought I had done something wrong. But then I realized that arrayed mirror acting. The ancients called this the reflex test. They said that before a new reality manifests, the mirror needs to test whether you have truly transformed. It is not enough to change your thinking, we need to change the reaction. And it was at this point that the learning became real. When something went wrong, I no longer asked, why is this happening to me? I asked, what inside me is being shown now? Each challenge was a lens magnifying parts of me I hadn't yet seen. I realized then that the mirror doesn't show punishments, it shows opportunities for integration. If someone disrespected me, it was a reflection of my difficulty in setting boundaries. If something was taken from me, perhaps it was a reflection of my resistance to letting go of what no longer served me. Everything had a hidden purpose. Hermetic philosophy describes this masterfully, as within, so without, as above, so below. This maxim is not just poetic, it is the mirror map. Every time we resist the reflection, we perpetuate the old image. But when we accept it and understand it, it dissolves. Over time, I began to see beauty even in the hard days. Because the mirror only showed what I was ready to heal. And each lesson I integrated cleared another fragment of my vision. It was then that I realized the mirror of reality does not come to please you, he comes to set you free. And freedom, almost always, begins with the discomfort of seeing yourself completely. It was when I thought I understood the principle that the mirror surprised me again. Because, even with good intentions, there was something that remained incoherent. I could say 1,000 times that I was prosperous, dignified, confident. But deep down, a silent voice whispered otherwise. And that's when I realized, the mirror doesn't reflect what you would say which is, it reflects what you believes to be. Ancient civilizations knew this secret. In Egypt, they called this the hidden face of being. They said that man carries two images, the one he shows to the world and the one the universe truly recognizes. And the mirror only responds to the second one. It was painful to face this. Realizing that, behind every attempt to change reality, there was a hidden, shrunken, insecure self. A self that has become accustomed to failure, to scarcity, to the fear of being rejected. And as long as that identity remained alive, the reflection would be the same no matter how much I tried to change the scenario. I then started a new type of work. Don't try any more to change the world, but rebuild myself from within. I asked myself, who would I be if I let the past die? Who would I be if I truly believed that I was part of the same creative principle that moves the universe? The Hermetic texts say that the awakened man becomes the very mirror of the divine. And maybe that's exactly it. When you change the image you carry inside, the mirror has no choice but to reflect a new reality. That's when I stopped acting like someone who was looking for change. And I started living like someone who had already changed. The difference is subtle, but the mirror notices it. Because it doesn't respond to requests, it responds to frequencies. And the frequency of certainty is unmistakable. Little by little, the reflection began to transform. The same situations kept coming back, but now I reacted differently. The world, somehow, recognized my new stance. And then I understood what the ancients meant when they said, the mirror does not show what is in front of you, but what lives inside you. After so many attempts to understand and master the mirror, I realized that there was a paradox hidden in this principle. The more I tried to control the reflex, the more unstable it became. It was like trying to smooth the water of a lake with your hands. The more force I applied, the more waves appeared. Until one day, tired of fighting, I simply stopped. I stopped trying to understand, I stopped trying to fix, I stopped trying to predict. And it was in that moment of surrender that the mirror calmed down. It was then that I realized, the mirror of reality doesn't demand control, it asks trust. The ancients knew this. In the mystery schools of Chaldea, the masters taught that the universe is a living river, and man is the reflection dancing upon its waters. He who fights against the current gets tired, whoever aligns with it, flows. I understood that trying to force reality was actually a form of fear. Fear of losing, fear of not being worthy, fear that the universe didn't know what it was doing. But when I started to trust, really trust, everything started to fall into place with almost supernatural precision. Things stopped happening my way and started happening at the right time. The doors I pushed desperately opened by themselves. The right people came to me effortlessly, and even the unexpected began to make sense. I discovered that the mirror is not static, it is a living organism, reflecting not only what you are, but also what the universe needs you to become. And when you trust, he leads you exactly where you need to go, even if the path seems confusing at first. In the Taoist tradition, there is a teaching that echoes this wisdom. Water overcomes stone not by force, but by persistence in being what it is. And that's what I learned from the mirror. He didn't ask me for perfection. He just asked that I would make me, without fear, without resistance, with faith in the invisible flow of life. And when I finally stopped fighting, the reflex turned into something new. No longer a battlefield, but a silent dialogue between me and the universe. It was at this point that everything started to expand. Until then, I saw the mirror as something that only reflected my life, my thoughts, my emotions. But then I realized something bigger. Every person, every situation, every coincidence was not isolated. It was part of the same mirror that extended beyond me. The ancients spoke of it in coded whispers. In Hermeticism, they called it the whole. In Taoism, from the flow of unity, and in each tradition, the same idea. The universe is not composed of separate things. It is a single reflection, where each consciousness is a fragment, and each fragment reflects all the others. I started to notice subtle signs, that annoying friend who seemed to constantly challenge me. It reflected my own impatience with life, opportunities that arose unexpectedly. They reflected the alignment between my inner intentions and the universal flow. Even the losses and hardships began to make sense. They were the mirror, showing me parts of myself that still needed attention. The mirror principle, I realized, is not just about changing yourself. It's about understanding that everything around you is an extension of what you carry inside. Every act, every reaction, every choice is a brushstroke in this great universal picture. And each gesture of consciousness is capable of altering the collective reflection, not just the individual one. I began to realize the responsibility that this brings. Because if every action and every thought echoes in the universal mirror, then true transformation begins with me, but it does not end with me. The whole world responds, subtly, to the change I can sustain within myself. That's when I understood that the mirror is not an obstacle or a judgment. It is a language, an ancient code that teaches us how to create reality, individual and collective. And in recognizing this extension, I felt a deep connection with everything around me, people, situations, the weather, even the very energy that permeates the universe. What was once a reflection has now become a dialogue. A silent dialogue between my consciousness and infinity. And for the first time, I felt the weight of ancient wisdom. The mirror always shows us the truth. And the truth is that we are never really separate from the universe we reflect. After walking this path, I realized that true change is not an isolated act. It's not just about thinking positively, or controlling your mind, or wanting something intensely. It is the integration of everything that is carried inside: feelings, thoughts, beliefs, intentions, identity, and universal consciousness. As I began to align each fragment, reality began to respond harmoniously. People reflected not only my emotions, but also my new inner coherence. Situations that previously seemed like obstacles now appeared as opportunities for growth. The world did not change by itself. I changed, and the mirror finally showed the image that had always been waiting to be reflected. I understood that the mirror does not judge, does not punish, does not choose for us. He only gives back what we give. And from that moment on, every thought repeated, every emotion nurtured, every intention truly felt began to have real weight in the world. No longer as theory, but as tangible experience. Ancient traditions already taught this. The Egyptian masters, the Greek philosophers, the Eastern sages all converged on the same idea. If you want to transform reality, start with the inner reflection. And this transformation is continuous. There is no endpoint, just constant flow. The mirror is always active, always ready to show us where we still need to evolve, and where we can already flourish. Now I understand that power is not in external control, but in awareness of who we are and what we project. The change we seek in the world, at work, in relationships, in our financial or emotional lives, comes from within. And when we transform, the world transforms with us, like water reflecting sunlight after being cleaned. The mirror of reality is, therefore, a silent and infallible teacher. He invites us to look within, to take responsibility for our projections, and to understand that every small internal change reverberates infinitely. And so, the final question I ask you is, if you want your reality to change, are you ready to look in the mirror and transform what it reflects? The mirror of reality is not an external object, nor an abstract concept. It is an extension of your own consciousness, a silent reflection of everything you carry inside. What you feel, think, believe, and desire, all of it echoes back to you in ways that often go unnoticed, but that shape your life in profound and inexorable ways. The ancients left us this legacy, an invisible, simple, and powerful law. They knew that external change begins with internal transformation. There is no point in fighting the world or trying to control external situations without first aligning your thoughts, emotions, and intentions with the truth that lives within you. The mirror only returns what you are, and then the great opportunity arises to look at the reflection with courage and awareness. Accept that every challenge, every encounter, every difficult moment is not a punishment, but a sign. An invitation to understand, cleanse, and transform what still lives inside you. Imagine, for a moment, living life aware of this principle. Every thought-out action, every recognized emotion, every intention aligned with your essence. You literally become the creator of your own reality. The world ceases to be a place of unpredictable surprises and becomes a mirror that responds to its evolution, a living field of learning and manifestation. Now I leave you with a question that could change everything. If you want to see your life transform, if you want to create more harmonious relationships, opportunities that flow, and a reality that vibrates in tune with your dreams, are you willing to start within yourself? Confronting your shadows, rewriting your beliefs, aligning mind and heart? The mirror waits, and he always shows the truth. Look at him with courage, transform the reflection, and watch the world change along with you.